And it has started. So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Zoraya Aquino, and I am the Student Senate President for Lorraine County Community College this academic year. And next could go our Vice President, Danielle, even though I just introduced her, but go ahead.
So I am Danielle Pavlak, and I'm the Vice President for Student Senate.
Thank you. Now, Carrie.
My name is Carrie Short, and I am the Director of Student Financial Aid here at Lorraine County Community College.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We will be talking with Carrie about FASFA and the why, the what, why, and how behind the scenes, like little insight about FASFA, and we will get started with our presentation now.
Cool. All right, I'm going to share my screen. So this workshop is called FASFA 101. And if I really wanted it to be like a 101 level class, we would probably be here for the next 2 weeks. So what I did is I pulled out some of the most important things that I think that students should be aware of regarding the FASFA, and we'll address them. But there's, it's just really hard to encapsulate everything because there's just so much. But hopefully I gave a lot of resources that at least will let you know that you can just reach out to Student Financial Aid if you have any questions. So my name's Carrie. I have been your Director of Student Financial Aid since mid-July of 2019. So I haven't really been here that long, but I do have around 15 years of financial aid experience. This is my first community college experience, though. And by the way, we did recently change our name from financial services to student financial aid. And for the most part, because financial services, when we did that, we did a lot of things with student accounts, which we don't do anymore. So we don't take payments. We don't really, do a lot with the bill or anything like that. The bursar's office does that, but since nobody really knows what a bursar is, they changed their name too, and they are now student accounts. So hopefully, as people get used to that, or as we have new students come on board, they won't even know that we changed. But hopefully, our new names give a better feeling of what you can accomplish at these two offices. So goals for today, pretty simple. Just review some general FASFA information and then answer your questions. I thought this was really important. A total of 17.7 million students filed the FASFA in 2019-20, down from the peak of 21.9 million back in 2011-12. About a third of undergraduate students do not file the FASFA. Of those who do not file the FASFA, 2 million would have qualified for a federal Pell Grant. So when we say you should complete the FASFA, we really mean it. There's a lot of misconceptions about why a family or a student might not complete the FASFA. And some of them are like, well, our family situation is kind of like my neighbors down the street and they don't get anything. So they said, so we didn't bother doing it anyway. You never know. There are so many different components to the methodology behind the FASFA once you plug in all of your numbers that you really can't do unless every single thing about these two families is the same, down to the age of the oldest parent and how close they are to retirement. There's no way that you would know that the situation would be the same. So it's a free application, so we encourage all students to apply. But it does help get free money for school. The FASFA is required to determine eligibility for the Pell Grant, which is the largest federal grant program. But there are other reasons to file it too. It's not all just about the Pell Grant, although the Pell Grant is huge, especially for those students who receive it. But the FASFA is also required to determine if students are eligible for other types of grant programs, like the SEOG grant. That's it's a federal grant program. For student loans, if needed, we try not to put too much of an emphasis on student loans, but there are some students that need to borrow student loans, either to, if they're going to school and they're not able to work, they have, expenses at home they need to pay for, or they're not eligible for a Pell Grant and they, are still trying to accomplish their degree or certificate program. FASFA is also required for federal work study, and we're going to have a whole session on federal work study. I think that one's next week, I believe. And then in some cases, other scholarships. And by that, I just mean This was something that we reviewed in our open forum last week, but sometimes we have scholarships that go without any applicants. And so what we'll do is we'll use FAFSA information to determine which students might have the greatest need that they're not receiving it. And then we'll take that information compared with some enrollment information from the records office, students who are enrolled, what their majors are, and then we will actually find students to give these funds to. So that's really, really important, I would think. October 1 is a really important date. That's the day that the FAFSA becomes available. I probably should have put a chart in on this, but I wanted this to this presentation to kind of be standalone, that anybody watching it could use it in the future. So the way that the FAFSA works is that you start filing it out in October for the following academic year. And so the way that the academic and aid years work here at Lorain County Community College is that summer is the first term in that award year, in that financial aid year. So if you are planning to attend classes in the summer 2021 semester, you need to file the 21-22 FAFSA, which became available October of 2020. So that means if you, as we go through this year, I know it just turned 2021 at the time that we're doing this presentation, but if you know that you're going to be taking classes in summer 2022, then you want to start filling out the FAFSA as soon as October 1st of 2021. So hopefully that makes sense. Maybe a visual would have been helpful, but it's really important. It's actually just as important to file early, or as early as possible, as it is to file at all, because some financial aid is first come, first serve. And one of those is that SEOG grant that I mentioned on the last slide. SEOG can mostly only go to students who have the Pell Grant. And we have students who receive, and you have to have a 0 EFC. That's the result of the FAFSA. After you put in all of your numbers, and it kicks out a figure. Students who, but it's first come, first serve. We don't have enough SEOG to give it to every single 0 EFC student at LCCC. So what we do is we award it based on the date that we receive the FAFSA. So one of the biggest questions we start getting over the summer term is, hey, I got SEOG last year, but I didn't get it this year. Why not? So then we look at the information and we're like, oh, well, last year you filed your FAFSA in December. This year you didn't file it until July. So, and if we have funds, believe me, we love to give away money. We don't have nearly enough to give away as much as we'd like, but we really want as many students to get funds as possible, but it does run out. I'm sure you can imagine that. So it's really important to file that FAFSA in October or as soon as possible. So how do you get started? One of the very first things, and it actually is one of the things that probably causes the most frustration for students who are familiar with filing the FAFSA, is this thing called an FSA ID. It's a combination username and password, and you need it to sign certain documents with the federal government related to federal financial aid. It acts as your signature. So you use it to log into certain websites to see your financial aid history. You use it as your signature when you're filling out the FAFSA. To create one right off the bat, it's not that bad. But if you created one and you don't know, you don't remember what it was, or you used an email address that you no longer have access to, or you didn't put your phone number in it, it is, I wish I was lying, or I wish I was exaggerating, it is ridiculously hard to get that reset. It takes a lot of time. So usually you're in the FAFSA, the students that we deal with, they're right there in the middle, they're ready to hit the submit button, and they can't remember their FSA ID. So they go out to the FSA ID website and they try to get it reset. Well, then you have to wait 10 minutes. Some students, it takes a couple of days and they mail the information. It's not good. And so one of the pieces of advice that I give when I do financial aid nights at high schools is, they tell you never ever write down passwords, username and passwords. However, in this case, I'm going to say, write it down, or write it down, take a picture of it. And if you lock your phone, keep it in your phone. Everybody should lock their phone, but just keep it in a very safe space. It's just because it's so hard to reset. And if you need your parents' information on the FAFSA, which we're going to cover in a couple of slides here, it's equally as hard for them. So this is information that you want to pass along to parents that will be completing the FAFSA along with the students. So that's why I say locate it if you already have one and make sure you can access it. Do that before you sit down to work on the FAFSA. Then you need to gather financial documents. And then, we realize that some students don't understand what some documents are. Like we'll ask for W-2s because sometimes we need to collect that kind of information. And they're like, I don't know what a W-2 is. W-2, actually mine's coming in the mail today. I just checked from Lorraine County Community College, but it is a document that covers the whole span of a calendar year of your earnings. So if you were employed at an employer, and you were not, some people get paid under the table. That's another subject. We'll maybe hit that in some other presentation. But if you're an actual employee of a company, so maybe you work at Jimmy John's or maybe you work at the college too, you get what's called a W-2. And that's a statement that summarizes all of the earnings that you had from your employer in the calendar year. So my 2020 W-2 from LCCC is going to be coming in today's mail. You also need federal tax returns. There is only one federal tax return now. It's called a 1040. There used to be different varieties of it, but the 1040 is a federal tax return, and it's for students or parents, anybody who is a taxpayer. Then you also need bank statements, and so that's your checking or your savings. Things like that. There are asset questions on the FAFSA. And then you need to determine if you need your parents' documentation as well. So big questions. This seriously is one of the most asked questions that we get in student financial aid. Do I need to enter parent information? And the most important thing to remember is this isn't something that LCCC decides on. And it's not something that, Cleveland State, these are not rules that we can make up. We are governed by a higher power, if you will, and that is the U.S. Department of Education. And they make all of these rules, and we have to follow them if we want to be able to continue to give students financial aid. So the U.S. Department of Education has very specific rules regarding whether or not you need to include your parent information on the FAFSA. And they do that by putting students into one of two classifications. They're either a dependent student or they are an independent student. And so you're an independent student, and this isn't a complete list. There are actually like 15 questions, but I just kind of, I didn't want to go too far into the woods with these, so I just wanted to give you an idea. You're independent if you're at least 24 years old, if you're married, if you have children, it's not just if you have children, but you have to prove that you provide more than 50% of their support, or if you are a veteran who actually served active duty, orphan, ward of the court, foster youth, homeless, and those qualifications, those criteria have some specific, if you were this as of age 13, it gets a little into the woods. It's very specific on the FAFSA, and if you're not sure about any of those, you can always reach out to Student Financial Aid, and we will help you determine what your dependency status is. If you can answer yes to any of those questions, or you happen to have a master's degree and you're filling out a FAFSA, you are also automatically independent. If you are independent, you do not need to include your parent information on the FAFSA. However, if you can't answer yes to any of those questions, then you are considered a dependent student for financial aid purposes, and you are required to include parent information. So let's talk about this. Two different things I want to talk about in this section. One is there is a policy, just like that professional judgment for FAFSA information, there is a professional judgment for dependency information, and it's called a dependency override. And so that's another thing that we as financial aid administrators have professional judgment to make, to change a student's status from dependent to independent with documented information. And it's not just, hey, I live on my own and I've been paying my own bills, since I was 20. So even though I'm 22 now, my parents don't give me any money, and therefore I'm independent. Unfortunately, U.S. Department of Education has very specific rules regarding whether or not you're a dependent or independent student. It doesn't matter about support in that regard. It does matter if your home situation so keep this in mind too if you have friends that aren't going to fill out FAFSA because they're afraid of their parents, or there's abuse or documented police files. In this day and age, we get a lot of students who get kicked out of their home because of their sexual preference or the gender that they identify with. Those are things, if it's dangerous for a student to be in the household or anything, basically it has to be pretty intense in order for us to do a dependency override. We do get audited on those from the government. And so, we do have to, if asked, provide documentation so that they see that we're not just doing it willy-nilly. But, any student in that situation that you hear of, maybe it's you, maybe it's a friend, maybe, you just happen to hear somebody overhear it, we absolutely can override that so that students can still complete the FAFSA without putting themselves in danger, even without parent information, even if they don't meet any of those criteria. So that's a really big question that we get secondary to, dependency status in general. The second sub question that I want to talk about is which parent. So let's say that your parents aren't together, or you don't live with either one of them. You fall into that category where you're kind of financially independent, but you're not independent for financial aid purposes on the FAFSA. For the most part, and again, I'm just going to harken back to what I talk about at the financial aid nights that I do. So let's say that your parents, your biological parents, are not married to each other, and you spend half your time with your mom and half the time with your dad. So you're like, well, they split, because it really should be which parent is the custodial parent. So which parent do you live with? But let's say you split your time evenly. My favorite response is that there are, at least every 3 years, 365 days in a year. It doesn't split evenly. Therefore, one parent is going to have you for at least 1 day longer than the other parent. Therefore, that's the parent you should include on your FAFSA. It gets a little tricky if you are, you have your own apartment and you're not, dependent on them for any purposes, and you still have two parents, and to make that choice, there are a number of different questions we could ask you to help you decide that. So I don't want to go over those, for the sake of, I want to make sure we have enough time to get to questions. But if you have questions about that, just contact our office, and I have the contact information at the end of this presentation. The other thing that gets a little sticky is, let's say that you live with your mom and your biological mom and dad are not married, but your mom is remarried, so you have a step parent. If you're in that household, a lot of times we get, well, my stepdad isn't going to pay, he's not putting anything towards my education. Unfortunately, again, the U.S. Department of Education has very specific rules that it doesn't matter to them. If you live with your mom and she's remarried, your stepdad's information has to be on the FAFSA. It has to. Does it seem fair? I'm not even going to get into that. I have my own personal observations about that. The only thing I would say is write your senators and congressmen if you don't like the process, because this is part of the Higher Education Act, all of these rules that we have to follow, and most of them haven't been changed since 1964. So, we have to do what we have to do, but keep in mind that, we do, we can use that special circumstance process, or that, either one of those professional judgment processes to, what we want is just to make sure that the FAFSA reflects the household information. And so, we do have leeway within specific guidelines, and everything has to be documented. So keep that in mind. So many more questions come out of that, but hopefully that gets, the general information, the general idea. So now you've got all your information, if you have to put parent information, which parent you have to put on, you've got all of that. Then you actually want to start the FAFSA, and it's at FAFSA.gov, or a couple years ago, they put it on a mobile app, so it's real easy to do it from your phone. It's My Student Aid, and it is available for iPhones or Android. And while I haven't personally done that, because I haven't filled out a FAFSA in quite some time, I've seen some demos, but they're it sometimes can be a little bit easier on the app to go in and update some information if you need to do that. So I would, if you're used to doing it online and it gets really frustrating to you, try the app, because it could be a little less frustrating. And that's pretty much all I'm going to talk about the actual form, again, because I just want to get to your questions. There are, and I have them at the end of this presentation, a number of fantastically put together websites, guides, YouTube videos on the actual how to complete the FAFSA. So I don't want to take up too much time with that, but I do have these, a lot of really good ones at the end of this presentation. But don't forget about us over here on the first floor of the library building. We have computers at the front of our office, and when we're open, because right now we're still on some modified hours due to the pandemic, we are here, and somebody will be here with you to fill out the FAFSA with you. We can't actually fill out your FAFSA for you, but you can go along and we can, guide you to how to answer these questions. We do it all the time. Or you can call, or you can do live chat. Live chat sometimes is a little bit easier because then you can you can actually see what the student financial aid rep is typing and saying. Sometimes it's just easier. And like I said, those YouTube videos and how-to websites. So let's say we're fast forwarding, you filed the FAFSA, you submitted it, everything's great. What happens next? There's a SAR, there's an ICER, and then there's a notice. And while the first two are abbreviations, the last one, I really just do mean like a notice. So what are those? Well, the SAR is the student aid report. So once you submit your FAFSA, you're going to receive a student aid report to the email address you put on your FAFSA, and it summarizes everything that you entered. And I really, really mean it when you should take a look at what you entered, because one of the biggest problems that we see, just generally speaking, a parent is filling out the FAFSA, and if you look at the FAFSA, it says, you. It means the student. So it's from the student's perspective. So it's going to say, what is your adjusted gross income? What is your income? And then it gets to the parent section and it's going to ask for parent information. But if your parent is filling it out and they see what's your adjusted gross income, they might enter theirs. And I don't know about you, but when I was a college student, my parents' adjusted gross income was a lot more than what mine was for my little rinky-dink job at the amusement park down the street. So it's really, really important that you make sure that some of those numbers, just look for any glaring errors like that. It's huge, and it could be the difference between Pell Grant or no Pell Grant. Next comes the ICER. This actually stands for the Institutional Student Information Record, and basically it's just our version of your student aid report. So once you get that student aid report, the government processes it, and all of the schools that you put on your FAFSA that you asked the government to send your FAFSA to, we get your ICER. And then it contains all of the same information on your SAR. Then comes the notification period, the notice period. And every school is going to work differently in how this happens. So here, generally speaking, now student financial aid here at LCCC is going through a software change. And so usually right about now, we're getting ready to update the student center of my campus so that you can see if we have your FAFSA and you can see if we need anything else from you. But this new software that we're going to doesn't work in the same way. And it's going a little bumpy. So we're not ready to do that yet. But generally speaking, what happens here, and we hope to get back to this soon, is that when we get your FAFSA, we send you a notice that says, hey, we got your FAFSA. Then we may send a follow-up email that says, we need some more information. Like, hey, we need more info before we can process anything. And so that is in the form of verification, which we covered on the open forum, kind of at length. But that's just where we're required to collect the documents that you use to complete the FAFSA before we can process your eligibility for, whether or not you're eligible for a Pell Grant or student loans or federal work study or things like that. Or some schools will just say, hey, we got your FAFSA, here's your financial aid for the year. It's going to be different every school that you look at. Although some of the notices are the same here as they are at the University of Akron, because I made those notices when I was at Akron. So, I just kind of carried those over. But that's pretty much what happens after the FAFSA. You get a SAR, we get your ICER, and then when we start processing for that year, which we haven't started doing it for 2021 yet, but we will hopefully sometime between March and April, we're going to start notifying you that, yeah, we got your FAFSA, and hey, we need more information, or actually, we don't do any of the actual financial aid stuff until May. So to tell you about your financial aid eligibility. So that is all that I have prepared, because I wanted to make sure that we had a lot of time for the questions. But I do want to just show you some of the follow-up slides so that you can see when Student Senate has those links to those resources that I told you about. And by the way, this is how you can contact us. Our email address and our live chat. I didn't put our phone number in here, not because we don't like to talk to you on the phone, but because we are in this like hybrid, remote and office working, it's just so much easier for us to help you out with email or the live chat. But you're still allowed to call us. You just might have to leave a message and we'll have to follow up with you. Here are a bunch of videos. There is this fantastic organization out of Georgia, I think, and I am just bowled over by the quality and the content of all of the videos that they have. So if you notice at the bottom, I put a link to all of their videos because I think they're fantastic. But here are ones I just pulled out specifically, how to complete the FAFSA. And they actually did two different versions, one for dependent students and one for independent students. If you have questions about your dependency status, even more than what I went over here, they have a great video on that. Whose information do I use on the FAFSA? That gets into that section where I told you about, maybe I live with mom, but I also kind of live with dad, but my mom's married, or whatever. That video will help with that. And then something we didn't talk about, but it's the data retrieval tool. If you have to put parent information on there, are tax filers, you could be able to use this tool called the IRS data retrieval tool, where while you're in the FAFSA and you're on those very specific questions from your tax forms, you can actually just link to the IRS securely, and it'll just plop all of the right information in the right spots for you. It's fantastic. And so again, that's a whole nother, we could spend an hour talking about the data retrieval tool. So I just went ahead and popped the video in here. And then these are just some great how-to websites, how to fill out some of them are steps, and then step-by-step they have videos on that. Or they're, just some PDF guides. But I think that, it's helpful. Of course, nothing's as helpful as getting, personal support. But in case you just want to take a look at this, there's some great resources. So I'm going to go back to time for your questions. And whoops, too far. There we go. And so I'm going to go to the chat because I know that Zarai put some of those questions in the chat. I thought I moved it, but let me move it over. She put some of them in the chat already, left over from last week, or just general questions. The first one is, who is considered an independent student? I think we covered that one pretty well. What can I use my financial aid money for? It is for educational related expenses. So that would be books, supplies, anything related to that, but also there are parts of your financial aid cost of attendance that includes rent, utilities, and living expenses, so anything to deal with, personal expenses for like groceries, things like that. Is there a limit to the amount of financial aid I can receive? Yes. And we're going to talk about this, but I'm pretty sure we did it at length during the open forum too. So I would definitely, if you want to find out more information, refer back to that video. But there are limits. So, and the limits are different, not just between LCCC and, Akron, or even LCCC and Lakeland Community College. It's all called this cost of attendance, and it is made up of tuition and fees, which is different everywhere. It also looks at what you put on the FAFSA. Are you living at home with parents, or do you not live at home, so you're a commuter student? What else? Books and supplies, it includes that. But the tuition and fees, it varies. Your cost of attendance varies based on how many credits you're in. So you don't have as high of a cost of attendance if you're only taking 6 credits than if you were taking 12 credits. And so the total amount of financial aid that you can receive is capped by that cost of attendance. Because we have such a low cost of attendance here at LCCC, we don't tell you all the way up front everything that you are eligible for, because most of our students receive the Pell Grant, and for the most part, the Pell Grant completely covers not just their tuition and fees, but also money for books. But I'm going to give an example. I used to work at Baldwin-Wallace University, and there the cost of attendance was much higher. It's a private school, and that's to be expected, than what it is at even the University of Akron or here. So what we would do when we determine students' eligibility for financial aid, we would need to show them their eligibility for all financial aid programs. So a financial aid award letter for a student who is attending Baldwin-Wallace would show cost of attendance based on what they put on the FAFSA. So their tuition and fees, usually based on full-time, their the cost for a room, the cost for a meal plan, that's called room and board, the meal plan. At BW, I don't know if they still do this, but they included books on their Jacket Express, on their ID card as part of their board plan. And then those miscellaneous expenses. So if you're living on campus, you don't have as many miscellaneous expenses, but maybe money for gas, even though you're not commuting. But then you can imagine that the commuter student wouldn't have that whole section for room and board as part of their cost of attendance. But anyway, so it would list their cost of attendance. Then we would summarize what financial aid they were eligible for. So maybe they got a scholarship, so that would be listed. Maybe they got, a Pell Grant, that would be listed. Because it's a private school and there are different kinds of funds available, maybe it would have a grant from the college. So those were called BW grants. And then because there was we would summarize to show you what, if you were receiving that financial aid award letter, it would show you what your out of pocket would be after all of the free money. So that's the grants, the scholarships. It would say, okay, after grants and scholarships, this would be your balance. And so because it was a higher cost of attendance school, we didn't want anybody freaking out thinking, oh my God, how am I going to come up with that? So it would show student loans because some students needed to borrow those student loans. It would also show federal work study eligibility if they were eligible. But the one thing, and we'll learn more about federal work study next week, is that federal work study funds are not guaranteed. You actually have to work hours in order to get a paycheck. And then, different schools vary, but some schools, although I don't know that they do this anymore, but some schools require you to put your work study earnings directly to your bill. But at BW, they didn't do that. So it would just say, you're eligible to earn up to X amount of dollars in federal work study, of which you can decide to use towards your bill. And then it would wrap up with either a parent loan, which is a loan that the parent took out, and it would show the maximum that they could take out, or it would have a private loan, which, so as you can imagine from what you've learned today, a parent loan is only available to dependent students. But if you're an independent student and you need more loan than what is available through the federal loan program by filling out the FASFA, those student loans, you could borrow a private education loan. So that's a really long answer to, is there a limit to the amount of financial aid I can receive? But I feel like it was really important to go over all of those parts. So hopefully that answers that question. And then the last one that's left over is, how does the Student Financial Aid Office contact me? Email, for the most part, your LCCC email. And through ISNS that if you don't want to check that, you can get it forwarded to another account outside of LCCC. So we highly recommend that. But sometimes we have, not last minute, but sometimes we need to just get a quick answer from you. So we'll also try to call you. However, if you don't keep your personal contact information up to date in My Campus, we have a really hard time to contact you. And I have a feeling I know why this question's here, because I gave this story last week. I'll just say it again. But we have a certain scholarship program from the state that has very specific requirements. And so we have 12 slots. We only filled 9. So rather than send out a message to all students who might not be eligible for it, it's for STEM scholars, STEM majors, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And so, if you're an art major, there's no sense getting this email. So we don't want to do that. But we worked with the records office to get a list of students who were in those majors. This scholarship actually does not require a FASFA, so we didn't have to bump it up against any FASFA information. but we used it to let the folks who are helping us with the Choose Ohio First program know here on campus over in school and community partnerships. We said, hey, here are 6 students that could possibly be, fill these 3 slots for this scholarship. So Courtney in that office called all of the students. Well, she tried. She could only reach 3 students. And so she had a conversation with 2 of those 3 students and said, hey, there's a scholarship. If you're interested, we think you'd be a great match. Go out and fill out this application. But for the 3 students who there were no phone numbers in, or the voicemail wasn't set up, or the phone numbers were wrong, or whatever, voicemail was full, she sent them an email. So not saying that this scholarship is one of those first come, first serve, but we're familiar how often you guys check your email. And we know that it's not very often. So if you're one of those students that we're trying to desperately reach to say, hey, we want to give you this money and we can't, and we send you an email and you don't check your email for a week, that money could be gone. That's real money. It sometimes could be, $1,500, $2,000, depending on if there's a Pell Grant in there and whatnot. So it's really, really important. And I will probably try to say this every workshop that I do with you guys, that you just need to make sure that that information is correct. Check your voicemail if it gets full, set up your voicemail if you haven't already. And if you change your phone number, make sure that you change it in My Campus. So those are all of the questions that were left over from last week. So Zarai or April or Danielle, Selena, I know some of you guys are staff, but maybe you, as you work with students, you may have some questions that you get. So let me know what you're thinking.
So I have a couple of things in mind. As we were going through the independent and dependent student description and the parent information on the FASFA, it occurred to me, what about those students that don't live with their parents, like at all? They came to the United States with a relative that's not their parent. What happens there if they can't get that information and things like that?
Okay, so there's always, I don't want to say exceptions, but there's always, caveats to a lot of this stuff. But one of the parents needs to be on the FAFSA. So then we get that a lot. What if the parent can't be reached? If they can't be reached through normal means, phone, email, those are pretty much, the normal means, then we could do what's called a dependency override. But it has to be documented that they can't be reached through normal means. Yeah, but for the most part, doesn't matter if they're not in this country, doesn't matter if they're not in this state, unless there's an abusive situation, or there are all sorts of caveats for maybe, parents are incarcerated. And, while you definitely don't live with them, you definitely can't access their information either. There are exceptions for those as well. So as we get into like those types of nitty gritty, just to be sure, I would reach out to student financial aid.
I agree. And being a transfer student myself, I wanted to ask if you could talk a little bit about how that works, how the transfer and university partnership works with financial aid. I know from personal experience right now, I still have to do the FAFSA, of course. And I have to list the 2 institutions that I need the FAFSA to go to. And I also need to do a form called the Consortium, and that is what helps distinguish which one's the host institution and how that financial aid is distributed. Yep. So I'm gonna let you talk a little bit about that in case we have any university partnership students that will view this.
Okay. So one thing that confuses me about university partnership, and I actually reached out to Billy Cern, who is in a new role over there, is I'm like, if you ever decide to do a video on or a webinar on how the university partnership really works, because I get the concept, I understand the concept, but where I get lost in is how it gets billed. And so I think it's different with different partnership institutions. So I am a little iffy on that, and I bet you we could have a whole session on that, or maybe think about some very specific questions. I know you just told me some, but I didn't write them down, so I apologize. And I can get the answers to those, because I'm just it's on my list of things that I wanted to learn, and then the pandemic hit, and then my whole first year here, now going on first year and a half, isn't going the way that I planned it to. It's still going fine, but I'm not able to check off everything on my learning list. So, but the most important thing about all of this is to keep in mind that only one school can give a student financial aid. And so some school has to make claim to that financial aid. So you can't get a Pell Grant here and a Pell Grant at Cleveland State. You can only get it at one school. And so, well, how do you determine which school you should be, filling out the FAFSA for, or doing that? It all depends on which school is going to be giving you the degree. So the way that, and that's why it gets tricky with university partnerships. So I'm just going to talk about transient students or being a guest student at first. So if it doesn't usually happen in this way, so I'm gonna flip it. Most of the time, we've got a student who is at Ashland, let's say, but they live in Elyria. And so when they come home for the summer, instead of taking classes at Ashland over the summer, they want to take classes here with us. So their home institution is Ashland, because that's the school where they're going to get their degree from, right? That's their home institution. So that means here they would be a guest. We are their host institution. So in order to start this process, so let's say they're not taking any classes at Ashland over the summer. They're taking them all here. Well, then Ashland's not going to give them any financial aid because they're not registered for any classes there. You have to be registered for classes in order to receive financial aid, right? So what you would do in that situation is you would fill out a consortium agreement. And consortium is really just a fancy word for like a gathering or a clump of schools. And to be honest, I'm not really sure. It's just a word that's always been in the profession, but I'm sure there's a really good explanation as to why it's used in this format, but I just know that it has. So I never really questioned it. Probably should have. But anyway, so let's say this student, let's say her name is Stephanie. So Stephanie needs to contact Ashland and say, hey, I'm taking summer classes, just not with you guys. I want to make sure I get my financial aid. So they're going to say, okay, well, we at Ashland are your home school. So we need you to fill out this form and take it to Lorain County Community College. And so the form will have the student's name. We will usually support, document how many classes the student's taking. And then we sign off on it saying, hey, we know that Stephanie is a national student, so we are not going to give her any financial aid here. That's the correct process. What usually happens is people fill out the FAFSA because they're taking classes at LCCC, and so we give them money over the summer, maybe, in the fall, they're homeschool. So let's say it's Akron. Akron tries to give them money, and they're like, well, wait a second, you're trying to get money from two different schools. And so Akron will contact us and say, you have to take that money away because we gave it away first. And we're like, oh, which causes a problem for the student, because especially if it happened over the summer, so let's say the student's enrolled in both places, a consortium agreement will actually add those credits together. So the Pell Grant you get awarded based on your enrollment. So if you're enrolled in 6 credits, you don't get as much Pell Grant as if you're enrolled in 12. Well, if you're taking 6 credits at Ashland or Akron, let's just say, and you're taking 6 credits at LCCC and only one school can give you Pell, they're probably both going to try to give you just for 6 credits. Well, one of them can't. So let's say LCCC has to take away their money. Well, you took 12 credits. And so you really want to get your Pell Grant for those 12 credits. So then you go through and you fill out this consortium agreement, and then we send it back to Akron, and they're like, oh, hey, you took 12 credits, so here's some more money because you took 12 credits. But it doesn't usually happen that way. So because we have so many unique programs like the University Partnership and things like that, and there's no really easy way yet, this is something that UP is working on, to kind of identify students as UP students before they get all into their UP-ness. There's no way for us to say, hey, do these forms to cause less trouble, down the line. So it's definitely one of those things that's on my whiteboard. of things that we need to work on. But right now with university partnership not having, right now they have an interim associate provost. And so, right now they're just trying to make sure that students are being served the best they can. And that's definitely on our list. But the most important thing to remember is that you can only get financial aid from one school. You want one of those schools to know all of the credits that you're taking so that you maximize your financial aid ability. And if you don't know which school you should be putting on your FASFA, definitely ask either financial aid office. And somebody who knows more about it than I do with University Partnership will be sure to answer you and get you the right answer for those questions. So I also know, just since we're talking about University Partnership, there are scholarships, LCCC scholarships that are available, first of all, that are available to all students. But there are some scholarships that are available specifically to University Partnership students, even if none of your University Partnership classes are being billed by LCCC. So I usually go through and I sign a bunch of checks or I sign a bunch of authorization forms to get scholarship funds sent from the LCCC Foundation to Cleveland State or Hiram or all of these schools. So you definitely want to go back and watch the open forum video and look at the links or go out to the website and look up, scholarships. And if you're a University Partnership student, apply for those scholarships. See how I turned that around?
I like it. You're hinting at the previous session and you're hinting at sessions to come. I love it. You're doing great. And I want to make sure that we leave some space for Danielle if she has any questions. So feel free to jump in at any time. I was just talking out of personal experience because I'm like, that is something I came across. Let's talk about it.
And if you're coming across it, other students probably are too. So that's perfect.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was actually one of my predicaments when I was going into the university partnership, because I'm like, wait a minute, before I even decide what my major is, I want to know how this financial aid is going to be done, because I don't want any issues, especially with what you said, that two institutions can't give you money and then all of a sudden they're like, oh wait, you gotta take one back. Like, I don't like all that chaos. Mm-hmm. So I like to do my research, and I don't even know how I found out about the Consortium Agreement, but I have all of you lovely people for that, because you guys look out for me a lot. And so yeah, that's what I had to say about that. And I want to ask Danielle if she has any questions, and we can talk about those. Danielle, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. I just don't have any questions I could think of off the top of my head because I've been through so many situations with the FAFSA. So I've experienced a lot of things.
Yeah. So maybe if you do think of some that you could generalize enough, even if I don't want to put you on the spot. So think about any that you think that, even though, because you may think that they're specific to you, but they may be, something that other students experience too. So think about that too, even though you have the answers, still maybe just ask the question and then I have an opportunity to answer it, but only if you're comfortable. So in the meantime, we'll flip over to Selena and April. I know that Selena is new to the EFCS division, so financial aid is probably, not probably, I know that it's a largely foreign concept, other than, she just knows that we're here and things like that. But Selena, as an administrator, as somebody that works as closely as you do with students, are there any questions that you have that students, maybe they voice some frustrations with you? April too, maybe, or as you guys were students, what kind of questions have you gotten?
I do. I'm going to wait for Selena to respond to see if she has any.
None that I can think of. I think my only one was at what point, what were the benefits to filing if you felt that you did not qualify for any of the loans or the grants? Because you do reach a stop point.
Sure.
You no longer qualify.
Sure, and that happens. That's actually, so let me think of a few things that I want to say along that. That actually happens more at a community college environment than students may think, because so I have a master's degree, but I want to take some classes, and it's actually for a certificate, and it's a short-term certificate, so it's not eligible for financial aid. But even if it was, as I come back, so I'm a very much an adult student, non traditional student, but I could, if I needed to, I could fill out the FASFA and find out if I'm eligible for any student loans. Can't get a grant, can't get a Pell Grant, because the government also says you can only get Pell Grant for your first bachelor's degree. I'm not working on a bachelor's degree. I want to look at a certificate, but and those, some of them are eligible, some of them aren't. But anyway, I already got Pell Grant, or I didn't, but my time on which I was eligible for a Pell Grant has passed. And so that's not an option. But I would still want to fill it out, because maybe in order to do the certificate, maybe it's compact. Maybe I'm trying to do it in the last 8 weeks of the term, and maybe, okay, this is a bad example because I'm not quitting my job, but maybe I have to quit my job, or maybe I lost my job. And so in order to pay for these classes and pay my rent or pay for childcare so that I can take these classes, I need to borrow a loan. So I want to fill out that FAFSA and make sure that I have that available to me. Or maybe to Selena's point, sometimes you do run out. There's a limit, a lifetime limit to the amount of Pell Grant that you can receive. There's also a limit to the amount of loans that you can have borrowed at any one given time. So you could pay some off and then increase your, eligibility for loans. But so yes, some students, because they are coming to us at different stages in their educational career, their educational path, journey, as well as their, employment, might not be eligible for some of those things. Maybe they're at, limit for the loans too. But maybe there's a really great opportunity for them to get a job on campus through student employment. And we'll really talk about this. And Selena, as a supervisor, there are some changes to that process. And so there are going to be a lot of training sessions coming up for you as a supervisor, as staff here. But we want students to fill out that FAFSA, because if they're eligible for federal work study, then that means that the federal government pays those wages, not the college. So a lot of times what we hear is that, oh, well, my department has money in their budget for paying students, and it's departmental. It doesn't have to be federal work study. So I'm just not even going to bother trying to fill out the FAFSA. Well, if you had filled out the FAFSA, and if you were eligible for federal work study, you may create room for a student who isn't eligible for federal work study to also get hired to help out that department. And so you may think, well, why is it up to me to make sure that somebody else can be hired? Or why is it, why do I have to be inconvenienced by filling out a FAFSA just to save the college money? Well, because if a department can pay a student, doesn't have to pay a student's wages because they're federal work study, then that department maybe has more money to invest in other resources. And so Selena, maybe for your department as manager for student, and I'm not getting your title right, but as you're in charge of student life and activities, if you're not using departmental funds to pay students, maybe you could use them to bring more people to campus. Maybe you can use them to have more different types of activities and things like that. So I know that you know that kind of stuff, but to our audience, it is probably mostly, students moving on. That's why we want to have this big push that if a student's eligible for federal work study, let's pay them for federal work study. The college gets reimbursed 100% of those wages. And so that means that 100% of those wages can be used for something else on campus. And back to well, why should I be concerned with that? Well, part of the whole experience about going to college is learning how to be a global citizen, and that learning how to look out for other people. And while some of us aren't really great at that all the time, this is a perfect example. If we could, if me filling out the FAFSA so that I can get work study means that somebody who misses federal work study by this much could at least get hired, and then now there's 2 of us to do the work, why would I not do that? And again, that's just really part of being, not just, global citizen, but, but our community, this lovely community that we have here not just at the college, but, our Lorain County community and as far as it spreads out. So that was a little bit of a soapbox moment, but hopefully you oblige. So Selena, how does that answer your question? That was a really good one. Oops, I'm sorry, you're on mute. You probably didn't know I was going to call back on you. All right. Oh,
No, that was a really good answer because sometimes people just don't want to fill it out. And, we in the past, because of being student activities, have had money in our budget. And I know things have changed now, so, they pretty much don't have a choice. But sometimes, is it still that it can affect them as far as getting loans and all of that comes into play?
Yep, because of that. Remember how I said we've got that cost of attendance. So any type of aid a student gets, hits into that cost of attendance. However, in order to work on campus at all, students have to be enrolled at least 6 LCCC credits. So you know that they've got at least a budget of, 6 credits plus the corresponding personal expenses, transportation, room and board, or not room and board, but, room and board just not billed by the college. And there was something else I wanted to say when you said that. Gosh. Oh, I hate when this happens in a recorded video because I can't think of what it was, but so this is another reason is that let's just say that you've got so here we have Donna, who doesn't fill out the FAFSA because she's not eligible for anything and whatever. But let's say halfway through the academic year, Donna's dad loses his job. And so now Donna, if she'd filled out a FAFSA, it would be a whole lot easier for us to say, hey, Donna, we've got this special circumstance form where you can say, hey, my circumstances have changed. Can you reevaluate me for more money? And maybe Donna is now all of a sudden going to be eligible for a Pell Grant. But if Donna didn't file the FAFSA originally, now she's got all of this added pressure. Gotta go fill out the FAFSA. Maybe she wouldn't even think to even ask that because she has no dealings or interactions with the financial aid office. So it's also kind of like an offset, like, hey, you don't need it now, but you may need it. You may need it. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah.
You're so good.
I'm liking this conversation.
Yes.
Me too. And that's why it's nice to have staff on too, because like I said, they have a different perspective. But yeah. I just can't believe I got to, talk about global citizenship. So that's I never get to do that in financial aid. So that is really exciting to me. So I think my boss would be pretty pleased that I was able to.
Yes, I know she would be.
I just worked that right in there. Yeah. Selena and I have the same boss, so I know she knows.
Yes.
All right, Selena, can you think of anything else?
No, not off the top of my head.
Okay. All right, April, what do you have for me?
So my question is more as a parent. So I have a senior. She'll be graduating high school, and she's in the CCP program.
Nice.
Now I know she's like looking at the UP partnership, but she's also been accepted into 4 or 5 other schools.
Okay.
But my question is, like I know Cincinnati, their acceptance letters was just sent out 2 days ago.
Yeah.
But how does the financial aid award and affect the CCP students that are graduating? Because I'm familiar with some of the financial aid from being a student and staff, but I don't know how it will work in case she does decide that she wants to go to another school.
Okay. So, I have so many things that I want to say, so make sure that I don't miss answering your question in case I get sidetracked, which kind of happens a lot with me.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I did not silence my phone. Sorry about that. So, first of all, let's talk about the cycle of filling out the FAFSA and hearing back from schools. It's one of the hardest things because I have been, I was at BW, which is private 4-year. I was at Akron, which is public 4-year, and now here I am at community college, public 2-year. There is, that was one of the hardest things for me community college is just different on so many levels. And so one of the hardest things for me to understand is that cycle because of what I was in charge of at BW and then at Akron, our cycle started so much earlier. So just to give you an example, and I don't know if this is still the same at Akron, but at least it'll give you an idea. Because, and I want to preface it with this, it's not that any college doesn't live or die or survive off of enrollment, because we all do. We all do. But when you add in at a residential college like Akron or BW, when you have that added expense of needing to be able to house students and then needing those students to do meal plans so that you can, be able to have meal plan options on campus and pay for it, you really need to be watching like a hawk your enrollment. You have very specific enrollment goals. We do too here, but we don't have to try as, and I don't want to say it that way either. That's going to come out wrong. It's just different. And so you're just going to have to trust me. It's different. So when I was at Akron, the area that I was in charge of was processing ISERs, so ISER processing and verification. And so FASFAs could start getting filed on October 1st. And keep in mind, the fall semester would have started just a semester before, or just a month before. So come October, financial aid is already thinking about next summer. So we're always working an academic year, an aid year in advance. So at Akron, FAFSA would open up on October 1st. We would spend, late summer into September and in through October getting ready for processing those FAFSAs for the upcoming year. And then right around November 1st, we would say, okay, we're releasing the hounds. We would notify all of these students about whether or not they needed to submit items for verification. And it would be thousands, because thousands of students fill out the FAFSA, right? And so what we try to do then is starting as soon as that information comes in, we try to finish as many verifications as possible, because at Akron, unlike BW, your verification had to be finished before we would send you a financial aid award. At a school like BW, where the expenses are a lot higher, the cost, the cost is a lot higher, they would, and they probably still do, send out a financial aid award, but it's contingent upon verification. And that's really just to give families an idea of, okay, because sometimes more planning needs to happen when a school costs $40,000 than when a school costs $20,000. So, but the timing of everything still kind of works out. So in my life cycle, when I was at Akron, November, we were just verifying as many as we could. We wanted to get as many verifications done as we could, so that when we started sending out financial aid award letters, which we always tried to do mid-December, it wasn't just the students who weren't selected for verification, but it was for as many students as possible. And then that cycle just kept repeating. And so that's generally how schools work when you have those extra, and this is just my opinion on it too. There could be other reasons why, your residential schools or your traditional four-year schools start that process so much easier. So when I got here, I was like, well, why don't we start as early? Why, if FAFSA is still getting filed in October, why do we not even start to pull in those ISERs until January or February? And then why do we not even let students know what we need from them until like March or April? And then we don't tell students what they're eligible for until May. In my mind, I'm like, where's your, it's just as important to be able to plan that information than it is not. But here's part of the reason. Because we are not, because our student population isn't mostly traditional, which you could kind of say that it is at a BW or at a UA, because we have students from, some students will take a class in one semester and then we don't see them again for 2 years. And then they'll take a couple more classes and then we don't see them for a while. Or they take some classes, they graduate, and then they want to work on a different degree because our degrees take longer or shorter, less amount of time. It is really challenging for students to understand, and I don't mean that as a dig to students, but when you're working with two different aid years at the same time, and you're either trying to get students to send you their tax forms right now so that you can get them financial aid right now so that they can pay their bill right now, it's really not a great communication idea to say, hey, not only do we need your information right now, but we also need your information so that we can get you set for 6 months from now, your summer. So because we we have so many students that are, they follow a unique schedule like that. A lot of students follow the, fall, spring, summer, fall, spring, whatever. But that's part of the reason why we take just a little bit longer, because we try to wrap up as much of the current year before we start in on the next year to cut down on student confusion. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. So then the other part of your question is, what do you do as she's a CCP student? Well, you already know that while she was in CCP, you didn't need to do a FAFSA because everything was paid for the most part. I think that's how CCP works, which
Yeah, that's how
I wish that existed when I was in school, because I like to think I would have taken advantage of that. Hard to say. I was a different kid back then. But
Right.
but when you fill out the FAFSA, you probably already experienced this. When you fill out the FAFSA, you put UC and all of the schools that she's interested in, you put them on her FAFSA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so then all of those schools will react. Before they will send any financial information, usually they wait until the student's admitted, because they don't want to say, hey, send us all this financial aid information if the student's not going to be admitted. That can happen, some students are, not admitted into schools. You're talking, you're more elites like Harvard and stuff like that, but still it does happen. And then, as these schools get into these different processing periods, like you said, you just got something from University of Cincinnati. I would say it's kind of late to be getting something, but to be honest, the pandemic and CARES and trying to figure out all of this extra money that the government gives you, that takes up a lot of bandwidth in financial aid offices, much probably to the chagrin of everybody in admissions at those schools and, the leadership at those schools, because they want paid deposits. They want to know who's coming so that they know, so that they can make plans on budgeting and things like that, because they live or die by that enrollment. So I'm surprised. I mean, here we are mid-February. Actually,
Yeah.
at BW, we usually always aimed for Valentine's Day, but that's when the FAFSA didn't come out until January 1st. But a couple years ago now, they started pushing the FAFSA out earlier in October. Some schools opted, like Akron did, and Kent. I know Akron and Kent, kind of competing. So we would always try to at least be out before Kent was. But that's why they started looking at December. But you do have some schools, and I would say it's probably more of the private ones, that still don't send stuff out until January or February. And a lot of that is just to get the new spring semester off and running, because January and August are the busiest times in financial aid offices, mostly because people wait till the last minute. So
Right.
just
I think
saying.
that's,
Not saying that that's what you did, but obviously because you're already getting this stuff back in. But as far as what you do now, she has some time. Most of your 4-year schools want her to commit by May 1. Doesn't mean that they can't commit after May 1, but they really want to commit by May 1. It's a huge day in admissions. I used to bake treats for my admissions friends when that mattered. When I was in those schools. May 1st, happy May 1st, because that really gave you an idea of where your enrollment was heading for the upcoming year. And then after May 1, it was like half the admissions counselors started focusing on the next year, and the other half were still trying to get students enrolled. So so at least she is thinking of coming here and doing the UP. We haven't started doing anything yet for classes that start in the summer, because we're moving to a new program, new software system, and it is completely different. It's going to be completely different for students. We have a meeting about it today to figure out the best way to talk students through that. But yeah, so I would say if you filled out the FAFSA and she's getting those those aid offers in the mail, she's right on time.
Yeah, well, right now we haven't received, so she's been accepted, and like one of the colleges has offered her a scholarship to attend their school, but we haven't received any of the financial aid offers yet.
Okay.
I'm trying to give her a little bit of independence, because she's going to be away from home, so she has to figure this out, some of it out on her own as an adult. But while she's here, I'm trying to help her find the information that she actually needs and apply for like different scholarships and different, just get everything started, getting everything ready for her.
Yeah. And I think that's fantastic. I am not sure when Cincinnati usually sends out their award letters. I know that on, well, we don't call them award letters anymore. We call them offer notices. But I know that you could probably just shoot them an email and ask when they start. They very much know when, or your daughter could reach out to the admissions counselor and say, hey, when will financial aid start doing that? I know at Akron, it's something that we used to have on our financial aid homepage. So I'm just looking at Cincinnati now. I don't see it on their website.
No, so what I'm trying to do too is getting her to narrow it down to where she actually wants to go.
Yeah, well, if she hasn't done a tour, she definitely should do a tour because there's something to be said for.
Her high school actually has an impact program that they did take kids all around different parts of Ohio. I know they went to Indiana, Pennsylvania to tour college campuses too.
Cool.
So some of them she liked, some of them she didn't. But one of her top schools has been University of Cincinnati just because of their psychology program. Awesome. And their research and grant opportunities. So she likes all that stuff.
Awesome.
Plus, it's away from here.
I can understand that. I didn't go too far, but yeah.
She's, we're preparing, but some other parts, we're like, okay, well, what do we do now?
Yeah. Well, just so you know, and this goes for anybody watching, it's not just because April's here and she's asking me questions, but you can email me any questions that you have, and if I can help. I actually, have a lot of friends that work at Cincinnati, so in financial aid and the bursar's office actually, and so if you if you have questions or whatever, definitely
even
let me
though
know.
she probably doesn't want to admit it, that's probably where she's gonna go. She hasn't said it yet, but she's been talking about that school for like a year.
Oh, and their logo's so cute, Bearcats. I love that.
Yeah. So that's what I was, because a lot of what we cover like traditional students, like maybe out of high school. I wasn't for sure, just as a parent and staff, how this would affect the CCP students too, and that are graduating.
Yeah.
Because I know, like, when they're in the program, everything's covered. When they graduate, though, that's when they would have to start doing everything. And then I was able to just connect my tax information to the financial aid form for her, so I didn't have to fill out all that stuff.
Nice data retrieval tool right there.
Yes, because I had to do it for myself, and I was like, this is ridiculous. Yes, so that's what I had a question is, because I know I'm talking to her and some of her friends, they was like, well, we don't graduate until May, June. And then we're like, well, you have to start applying now. You have to do your FAFSA now instead of waiting, because sometimes that's how, everything depends on when everything has to be turned in. And what if there's a glitch in the system that you need to send more papers in?
Definitely.
What
an exciting time. All right.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
I'm so glad that we got to talk to you, Carrie. Thank you for all of the information. It's truly appreciated, and hopefully we can use these videos as a potential like YouTube playlist somewhere for students to view, because this would definitely save you guys a lot of repetition in appointments with all of the frequently asked questions. So thank you so much for joining us today. And it is 1:24, almost 1:25. And if there's no more questions, then we can go ahead and wrap up the recording, and everybody can be on their merry way.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If I have any more questions, I would definitely be in touch.
Good.
Of course. And for the sake of the recording, Carrie, if you could just say your name and your contact information again, just to cover the basis, that would be great.
Yep, Carrie Short. We are here at FinAid, FINAID at lorainecccc.edu, or you can live chat from our website, lorainecccc.edu/financial aid, under the chat with us or online chat button. Or if you do want to call, we're 440-366-4034.
Thank you very much. And once again, I am Zaraya Aquino, the Student Senate President at Lorain County Community College for the 2021 academic year. It's been a journey and a trip so far. I'll let Danielle reintroduce herself, and we've reached the end of our session.
So again, I'm Danielle Pavlak, Student Senate Vice President, and I hope that you found this session to be helpful.
Thank you very much, and I will stop the recording.